Have you ever been there? An argument that starts over something tiny, like who was supposed to grab the milk, and somehow it just explodes. Suddenly you're in a massive fight about respect, about responsibility, about the entire state of your relationship. So many couples feel trapped in these cycles where the smallest thing can detonate. So today, we're going to unpack one of the most common and kind of invisible patterns that drives these fights and figure out what's really going on under the surface. This quote right here just gets right to the heart of it, doesn't it? It's that baffling feeling when a simple conversation completely derails and all of a sudden you're fighting about how you fight. It's so frustrating, it's exhausting, and it leaves both of you feeling totally misunderstood. But what if the thing you're arguing about isn't actually the real problem at all? Okay, so let's see this in action with a classic example. Meet Alex and Sam. Now for them, the forgotten milk isn't just about milk. For Alex, it feels like a total lack of care. And for Sam, Alex's reaction feels like a personal attack. So let's pretend we're sitting in on their therapy session to understand what is really going on beneath this argument that they have over and over and over again.
So the first step to breaking any cycle is you have to be able to see it clearly. The fight between Alex and Sam, it's not about chores, it's not about memory. It is about a hidden dynamic, a kind of dance they're doing that's being fueled by anxiety. And this pattern has a name, and just recognizing it is the first huge step toward changing it.
Now, this is so important to get right away. These roles are not character flaws. This doesn't mean one person is good and the other is lazy, or that one is caring and the other is controlling. These are just unconscious coping mechanisms, strategies we all learn to manage stress in our relationships. We're talking about patterns, not personalities.
So first up, we have the overfunctioner. When this person feels anxious, their instinct, it's almost a reflex, is to take control. They're the ones making the lists, sending the reminders, solving the problems before they even happen. On the outside, yeah, it can look like they're just super competent and responsible. But underneath, all that action is really a shield. It's a way to manage their own internal fear by controlling their external world.
And then on the other side of that coin, you've got the underfunctioner. When this person feels overwhelmed or maybe criticized, their response is to pull back. They might just shut down, get really passive, or let the other person take over completely. Now, this is not about being incapable. It's a strategy to create emotional safety and dial down their own anxiety by just disengaging.
And here on this chart, you can see exactly how these roles lock into this perfect but totally dysfunctional feedback loop. Alex, our overfunctioner, sees Sam struggling and immediately steps in to help. Sam, feeling micromanaged, just steps back even further. Well, this just confirms Alex's belief that they have to take charge, which leads to even more overfunctioning. And in the end, Alex feels resentful and burned out, and Sam feels criticized and inadequate. They're stuck in a dance where each person's go-to coping strategy just triggers the others.
So you might be wondering, where do these automatic responses even come from? I mean, why does one person lean in when they're stressed while the other pulls back? These aren't random choices. They are actually well-rehearsed survival strategies that we learned in our very first relationships, in our families. And this is the crucial point. These patterns were not born in our adult relationships. They were useful, maybe even necessary, solutions to the emotional world we grew up in. They helped us feel safe, get our needs met, and earn love and approval. But the very strategy that helped us survive childhood can become the exact thing that creates so much distance and pain in our partnerships today.
Let's look at the overfunctioner's story. This is often the oldest child, the responsible one. They got a lot of praise for being competent and helpful. So they learned super early on that their value was wired to what they could do for other people. Being one step ahead wasn't just a personality trait, it was how they secured their place and felt loved in their family.
Now, the underfunctioner, on the other hand, usually had a totally different script. Maybe they were the youngest and other people were always quick to jump in and do things for them. The expectations might have been lower. It's not that they were incapable, but they just had fewer chances to build certain skills. And so that competency muscle never really got a chance to fully develop. They learned that relying on others was the easiest way to get by. The psychological framework for all of this is something called attachment theory. Basically, it says that our earliest bonds with our parents or caregivers literally wire our nervous system for relationships. So if your caregivers were maybe inconsistent, you might develop an anxious attachment where you constantly pursue connection to feel safe. Sound familiar? Like an overfunctioner? Or you might have developed an avoidant attachment where you withdraw from intimacy because it feels kind of threatening, just like an underfunctioner. These are deep physical responses, not just thoughts.
Okay, so let's put all the pieces together now and watch how this childhood programming plays out in real time between Alex and Sam. We're going to see how their individual anxieties crash into each other to create this painful cycle of pursuit and withdrawal, turning a simple request for milk into a battle for emotional survival.
So here's where it gets really interesting, because the cycle often begins outside the relationship. Step 1, an external stressor, like a crazy deadline at work, raises Alex's general anxiety. Step 2, that anxiety hijacks Alex's brain and it defaults to its old coping mechanism, seek control. Step 3, Alex starts overfunctioning, reminding Sam about the milk, yeah, but also the bills, the dog's appointment. It's a pursuit for control. Step 4, Sam feels that pursuit as criticism and pressure. Their anxiety spikes, and they default to their own coping skill, underfunctioning or withdrawing to feel safe. And step 5, the result? Both feel abandoned, resentful, and the connection they both desperately want is just gone.
So when this cycle repeats over and over and over again, something pretty dangerous starts to happen. The relationship can enter a state that relationship expert Dr. John Gottman calls negative sentiment override, or NSO. And what that means is, basically, the emotional bank account of goodwill is so overdrawn that your brain starts putting a negative spin on absolutely everything your partner does. You just start assuming the worst. And here's exactly what that looks like. Let's say your partner brings you coffee. In a healthy state, you'd probably think, oh, how sweet. But when you're in negative sentiment override, that same kind gesture gets filtered through this lens of suspicion and all your past hurts. A positive action gets twisted into more evidence that your partner is thoughtless or just doesn't care. You're not even responding to the present moment anymore. You're responding to a long history of resentment.
And get this isn't just in your head. When you're an NSO, your body goes into a literal state of alert. Your amygdala, that's the fear center of your brain, gets totally hijacked. Stress hormones like cortisol flood your system. Your heart rate goes up, your body is preparing for a threat, which makes things like true listening, empathy, and creative problem solving almost biologically impossible. So the big question is, how do you escape this trap? It feels so automatic, so ingrained, but it is possible. Breaking the cycle isn't about one person winning the argument. It's about both partners recognizing the destructive dance they're in and making a conscious choice to learn a new step together.
Here are 3 really concrete steps. First, name the pattern, not the person. Make the dynamic the enemy you're fighting together instead of fighting each other. Just saying something like, hey, I think we're falling into that over-functioning/under-functioning thing again can stop it right in its tracks. Second, you have to rebuild that emotional bank account. Intentionally create positive moments. Express appreciation, be affectionate, have fun. This builds the buffer you need for the hard times. And finally, practice the opposite action. And this is the really hard part. The overfunctioner has to tolerate their own anxiety and consciously let go of control. And the underfunctioner has to tolerate their discomfort and consciously step up and take initiative. You know, all these actions are forms of what the Gottman Institute calls repair attempts. A repair attempt is basically any statement or action that stops a conflict from spiraling out of control. It's not about admitting you're wrong. It's about taking responsibility for your side of the cycle. It's about hitting the pause button, showing respect, and choosing to turn back toward your partner, even when every single instinct is telling you to attack or run away. Ultimately, breaking this cycle requires a huge shift in focus, away from your partner's behavior and toward your own internal world. This quote just says it all, doesn't it? As long as Alex is focused on making Sam more responsible, and as long as Sam is focused on making Alex less controlling, they will stay stuck. True, lasting change doesn't come from fixing your partner. It comes from getting curious about your own reactions and taking ownership of your own side of the street. So we'll leave you with this final thought. What if the overfunctioning isn't really about your partner's incompetence, but it's about your own deep-seated fear of things falling apart? And what if the underfunctioning isn't about laziness, but about a profound fear of not being good enough? When you shift the goal from controlling your partner to understanding yourself, you move from a cycle of resentment to a path of connection, and that changes everything.